Good morning, everybody. Hey. I think I've met most of the people in this room, but just in case, my name is Adam, and I'll be running the hacking workshop today. Oops, there we go. All right. So I'm going to tell you a little secret. No one is born thinking like a hacker. No one is just comes into this world as a hacker, and that includes myself. So let's rewind the clock back to 1997. Which is kind of an interesting time for hacking because it's one of those moments where you could literally hack any computer system. But we're going to talk about that more in a second. So this is me, 1997. Before I knew anything about hacking, before I really knew anything about fashion sense, before I knew really anything, to be honest with you, just a young kid. And it's amazing because it would be exactly like almost 4 years later that I went on my very first date from when this picture was taken, and it was just a mystery to me at the time. I spent most of my time running or playing Dungeons & Dragons or screwing around with computers. And when I say screwing around with computers, I mean just playing around with them. I didn't really know anything, but these brand new things got released called MP3s. And these were amazing in 1997 because they only took 4.5 hours to download. And the very first one I downloaded was Mother by Danzig. And I was super excited because my school had just gotten a computer lab. And I was trying to learn more about computers, and there was this typing class that they kind of forced us to take, and I would do the typing lesson, but then trying to learn more as I would go. So teenage me loaded up some music onto a zip drive, took the zip drive into school, plugged into the computer, tried to load my music over to the computer, and the computer had done something the computer had never told me before. It told me no, access is denied. You can't play your music on this computer. And it was just very confusing because it was like, I'm just trying to play my music. I'm just trying to copy this file over. What's going on here? So instead of doing my typing lesson that period, I spent the entire period trying to figure out what was stopping me from playing my music. And as it turns out, back then there was a company called Fortress. They're still around today. They make kiosk software for when you go to an airport or a mall and you see a computer, so you can only do certain things. And I spent the entire period figuring out that this program existed. And I didn't know anything about computers. I wasn't a programmer. I was just some young kid. But I realized that this thing was in the way of me doing what I wanted to do. And so I used the most elite hacking tool of all time, Microsoft Word. And we're actually going to do a similar exercise today. And I took that executable and I dragged it into Word. And for any of you that know anything about computers, you'll know that you'll get a jumble of junk when you do something like this. I was looking at the program code, but I didn't know that. I was just looking for any way to shut this thing off. And so after looking through 57 pages of this over 45 minutes of this period, I finally found this little piece of text that said /reboot, disable Fortress on reboot. I didn't know anything about computers, but I knew that's exactly what I wanted. So shakingly excited, I pulled up the command prompt. I typed in the command, I typed in /reboot, the computer shut down, and it came back and Fortress was gone. There was nothing left of this security program. So I installed my zip drive, I dragged my music over, and then I did the same thing that pretty much every other teenager does when they're screwing around. Without thinking, I hit that big red button. I hit play on that computer, and what I didn't notice at the time is that the volume on the speakers on the computer was turned up to absolute maximum. So Mother by Danzig goes blasting across the computer lab. And 30 sets of eyes turn around and look at me. And I'm like, oh God, I'm going to jail. And in the most bored voice you could ever imagine, the teacher, sitting up, still looking at their computer, never lifting their eyes from that computer, goes, someone shut off that music. So I hit the mute button. And it was like stealing a car, getting pulled over by the police, and being let go all within the span of 30 seconds. So from there I was hooked. It was like, okay, we need to learn more about these computers and more about hacking. But the lesson I learned that day, which is very important, and I hope was one of the lessons you take away from here, is you cannot find something if you do not look. I could have stopped right there when it said, no, you're not allowed to play your music. No, you can't do this thing. No, you can't copy your files. And so part of hacking is really just having the courage and tenacity to keep looking and wanting the world to be a slightly different way than you see it and slightly way than it was designed. So who am I? Since then, since that's kind of squirrely 16-year-old kid, my name's Adam Cecchetti. I went on to found a computer company called Cecchetti. We help the Fortune 10 tech companies secure the cloud, secure the mobile devices that are in your pocket. We did the first review of security on Bitcoin, as well as we did helped Ethereum launch and become a cryptocurrency. And over the course of my career, I've worked on everything from robots to airplanes to all kinds of entertaining things. And our firm was directly responsible for helping the 1/3 of the internet, which flows through the major cloud providers, be slightly more secure. I'm currently writing a book called How to Think Like a Hacker. Some of the lessons from that book are in here. Some of the things I'm trying to get across in this workshop are here. So I would love feedback at the end of this. If you're like, Adam, that made no sense. Adam, that was, that made a lot of sense, or that didn't make sense, please. I am feedback driven. I would love to hear it. If you're like, that was an absolute waste of time, I will buy you a beer, and we'll talk about that too. I will just buy you a beer anyways, or a glass of wine, whatever. So a couple of disclosures. I've run this in a one-to-one format about 100 times. So I've done a much more intimate setting with this exercise. Is either a training tool or is an interviewing tool at the organization I used to run. And so this is the first time running in a group setting. So this is a little bit of an experiment. I'm gonna do my best to kind of come around and work with everybody as I can. But a lot of this is gonna be driven by you. Where I'm gonna ask you to trust me and go along with this journey with me. And you will get out of it what you put into it, just like any other workshop. So in that, let us dent the universe with itself. So what is hacking? I talked to a few people before they came here, and they're like, I don't know anything about computers. I don't know anything about security. Why, am I going to be lost here? And the answer is absolutely not. Hacking has nothing to do with computers. Computers are just simply hacked because they're one of the perfect environments to do hacking in. You get the ability to see the entire system, you get fast feedback, and you get the ability to make changes very quickly and see the results of those changes. But the truth of the matter is that any system, mechanical, legal, chemical, environmental, physics, can be hacked. So what is it? It's a creative analytical process that allows us to look at a system, distill its pieces, distill its parts and its flows, and really have a true understanding of A, why that system was built, and B, what the limitations of that system are, and C, finally, when somebody built that system, how did they expect it to be used? When they originally put it together, they had a thought in their mind. You're gonna do A or B, and then C is gonna happen, then D is gonna happen. And we're gonna reconstruct a similar system as we go through this exercise. One of the things I occasionally hear from folks is, well, what about air gap systems? What about these isolated systems? What about this individual or this thing that you can't plug into? There are no such things as islands. There are no such things as air gap systems. All systems in some way, shape, or form interact with each other, and thus all systems can be hacked. So let's go to a coffee shop. Did everyone bring something to take some kind of notes on, whether it's a cell phone or pen and paper? It doesn't really matter, just something you can kind of write some stuff down on. All right, so we are gonna build a coffee shop. The first thing that we're gonna do is I want you to imagine that you have met someone. Actually, let me back up. Has anyone here never been to a coffee shop? Because this has happened to me exactly one time. You've never been? Oh. No, okay, so everyone here has in fact been to a coffee shop. Because I had this amazing technologist that one time came to Deja internationally, and he's like, tea shops. And I was like, great, tea, we'll work with that. Okay, so everyone here has been to a coffee shop. So I want you to imagine that I have never been to a coffee shop, ever. I don't even know what coffee is. So I want you to spend the next 3 to 5 minutes thinking about how you would describe a coffee shop to someone that has never been into one before. And take some notes, write that down as if you had to kind of like give that talk to them.
But everything else we can assume they understand about what they know what coffee is.
They know what coffee is, but they've never been to a coffee shop and they have no idea what a coffee shop is or what it would be. All right, it seems like we're kind of getting there. I'm seeing some eyes, I'm seeing some Twitters come up, that kind of thing. Does anybody need a little bit more time? Nope, all right. Is anyone willing to talk about their coffee shop to the group as if they had never been to one before? Perfect.
Oh, my God. This is intimidating. Coffee shop, a place where people go to order and drink coffee. Primarily, it is welcoming and pleasant. You can spend time there alone or with others, think, dream, and relax. Some people work as well, for example, writing, reading, studying, or accessing their computers. It should be easy to get to, either walking or driving, depending on the type of environment where it's located. The people that work there should be friendly and efficient.
Sounds like a reasonable explanation of a coffee shop. Anybody want to add anything?
So part of the problem with the question is you need to get more information about the people you're talking to and understand, do they know what coffee is? Do they know what a restaurant is? And then you. So the description that I'd give makes a whole bunch of assumptions that the person knows that they know what a restaurant is, they know what a menu is, they know so I could go through that and tell you based upon certain assumptions, but I wouldn't give you an answer that would be useful unless I knew what those assumptions were.
Great answer. So while everyone went through this exercise, just really quick. Oh, sorry. Yep. So while everyone went through this exercise, they had to start sorting assumptions. They had to sort their own assumptions about what they thought a coffee shop was. And they had to start sorting the other person's assumptions about how they would explain to them about what they did and didn't understand. Could you relate it back to whether or not they had been to a different restaurant, a tea shop, a different place before? Is there another system, unlike the coffee shop, that I can put this into a system for that other person or myself that I can see that in? So, let me, oops.
Oh, I just added some about the business model and the free perks that are added to the shop to encourage people to stay longer and drink more coffee.
Great.
You said people didn't even know what coffee was. So I describe coffee. It's a beverage it's made from coffee beans. It has a mild stimulant called caffeine in it. You can buy coffee, but you can buy coffee here that is decaffeinated without the stimulant. You can add things like milk, sugar, or even chocolate to coffee to make it more pleasant for drinking. We also sell food items that may help you enjoy your drinking of your coffee.
That's great, because he stepped back and said, I'm just going to throw your assumption away that they did know about coffee. You told me that, but I don't care. This person may never have heard this, and you, Adam, might have no idea what coffee is. So let's make sure that everyone's on the same page about what coffee is.
Thank you. So similar to my friend where he took the notion to describe coffee, I assumed that you didn't even know what a shop was. So I went down that rabbit hole of explaining what a storefront is and what you might find when walking in, that there's tables, there's chairs, there's shelves with beans, the machines themselves and what the machines do, and the people then serving you.
Excellent. All right. All great answers. The only way to have a wrong answer right now is to not do it, is to write nothing down. That is the only possible way to do this incorrectly currently. All right, so now we are going to spend 2 to 3 minutes writing down all the things in a coffee shop or all the people in a coffee shop. So take whatever your initial model was and just make a list of the things or the people that you believe are, I'm sorry?
Either the thing.
Both, yes. My apologies. All of the things or people in a coffee shop. There were some great examples about tables and a coffee machine. Seat it with that, but there's many things that could be in a coffee shop. There's many people and types of people and roles in a coffee shop. So just write down a list of all of those. Alrighty. Anybody want to give me an example or two of something that's in their coffee shop? No.
So initially, instead of telling them what I thought the coffee shop was, I asked them what if. What if there were a place where, and so I could paint the picture for them. So when I added in the rest, I said, I took sights and smells, and I said, it smells like this wonderful, unique permeation throughout of coffee beans being brewed. There's usually artwork around. Many times it's local. There's design work that demonstrates their branding. You'll see baristas, and those are professionally trained coffee workers, and you'll see sometimes older folks gathering together for conversation. You'll see young teenagers giggling and buying coffee. You'll see professionals working quietly in corners or business meetings going on. Sometimes there'll be education of the coffee beans. One of my favorite places, one of the baristas stands on the corner and talks about the coffees of the day. This is Ethiopian, and this is where it came from, and and dogs, in my case, a lot of dogs.
Thank you. I really appreciate you sharing. We're not going to sit here and listen to 20 different lists, but that was a great list. So let's move on to the next piece. Yes. Oh, do you absolutely have to? Because we can. All right. I'm happy to. Okay, so the next piece, and this is only going to take maybe a minute or two, maybe 3 max, is you walk in the door of your coffee shop. What are all the steps between you walking in that door to you ending up with a cup of coffee in your hand? What is the flow of your shop? How does your shop work? All right, so did some people find that it took a second to kind of switch mindsets? We spent the morning building and thinking and imagining and designing a coffee shop, and then I switched you into, well, wait a second, how do I get free coffee in this thing that I just spent the morning imagining and putting together? It took a second for folks? Yes, no, a couple of nods. So we got to switch our mindset, right? Many people here are creative. Many people here build things for a living. Many people here, do wonderful things with systems. But to get to this, we have to kind of flip our brain. Oh, thank you. Pandemics changed all kinds of habits. We have to flip our brain into a different mindset. We have to think a little bit differently. We have to look at the system just slightly a little bit different. So who here started down one rabbit hole and was like, I can get coffee this way, 3 or 4 or 5 different ways, and then kind of hit the end and had to kind of come back out and go to a different part of the system or a different interaction with the system to find new ways? Was that kind of a general thing, or? Yeah, so that's natural. This happens with pretty much all hacking, is that you kind of go down a rabbit hole, you might hit a dead end, you might say, well, that's not probable, that's not possible, so. But we're not worried about that right now. We're just worried about any possible way we could find ourselves free coffee. So let's get on the same page. I'm going to put up a sketch of kind of the coffee shop that I usually think of when I run this exercise, so we can all come together and then talk about the ways that we got free coffee in our coffee shops. I'm going to come around and we're going to go through, and then we're going to talk about each of the steps we did previously in designing it and how some of those steps helped us to arrive at ways that we could get free coffee. So this is my coffee shop. It has a door. Has some tables and people kind of milling about. There's somebody working some type of cash register or machine or tablet or whatever. There's another person working the coffee machine in the center there. They get orders from the person from the machine, and then they hand the coffee to the third person on the end, and they put coffee on the end. Does anybody disagree that this could be a working coffee shop? All right. Does anyone see that the way that they got free coffee might be able to get free coffee in this coffee shop? Does anyone not see that some of the ways they came up with? So while our systems might just be slightly differently aligned, we can still kind of abstract and port some of the things over and say, oh, the way that I got coffee in the coffee shop that I designed is totally valid for the way that someone else designed a similar coffee shop. So I'm going to come around and ask some people, how they got free coffee, and we'll kind of just walk through a few of those.
Well, I'll give them the one that you liked, that I did. One of my options was to ask the barista for free coffee for you because you're a police officer.
So this is a great one. We're appealing to a different authority outside of our system. Now, if it's a EMS, fire, the mayor, a government official, the health inspector, This is something where we say, okay, our system is connected to another larger system that trusts other people outside of it in some way, shape, or form, depending on your politics and what you agree with right now. But in some way, shape, or form, the social contract that our system is connected to and the trust that we have can be exploited. That person's a firefighter. That person's a police officer. Would you please get them a free coffee?
So the first one I came up with actually was the owner says, well, you're in luck. Today we're doing a free flight of our top 4 coffees. So here you go.
So now we're using time a little bit. We're saying, okay, today is a special day. And a few other people came up with some other ones, so I'm not going to ruin those as we come along. But the coffee shop exists not just in this moment in time, but throughout time, from the beginning it was open to the end. And that may be interesting to us for when we want to get a free coffee.
I was just going to threaten the barista.
So when you say threatened, what do you mean? Like how?
Maybe hold them up or intimidate them.
Okay. All right. So we're going the brute force method. We're pulling out a gun and putting it in somebody's face and saying, free coffee. Do you think this system's going to not give up a free cup of coffee in that scenario? Like if you push this system hard enough, no, nobody's dying over a cup of coffee, right? They're probably going to look like you're crazy, but it's a perfectly valid way. Not a consequence-free way, but a perfectly valid way.
I had one similar, was like, I'm going to sit there until it's my birthday and they give me a free coffee. And then I'm going to cry fire until everybody leaves and I can get the coffee.
All right. Okay, so we got 2 good ones here. One, also playing with time. You could fake it your birthday if you're not that patient. I'm definitely not. When I want caffeine, I want it now. Or you could just wait until the system is changed into a state that aligns with what you want. And some systems, that's the only choice you have. It takes time for the system to rotate itself to where you need it to be. And then you can exploit it or change it or make the push that you need to. The other one was cry fire. Okay, so you're not wrong, but tell me why you think you're going to get free coffee in that scenario.
Because I'm assuming that if everybody thinks that there's a fire, they're going to leave and leave the coffee abandoned there.
Absolutely. So we're kind of back to the coffee or your life scenario. What is the priorities in this system? What matters in this system to the people that constructed it and the people that operate it? So if somebody thinks they're going to burn to death, they're not going to worry about your triple pump quad latte. They're leaving. However, we'll talk about probabilities near the end of this. When was the last time you saw somebody get up when you yelled fire? But that's we'll get to there in a second.
Also on the idea of time, coffee shops always have coffee that's been mismade incorrectly, so we thought we'll just wait and then give this person whatever the next mistake is.
So not all systems operate perfectly. There are mistakes in every system. There's some kind of exhaust. There's some type of thing that says, at the end, this might not go to where it's destined to go. Where does that go? Does it go in the trash? How do we clean that up? How do we make sure that that waste stream, that cycle, that whatever it is, isn't exploitable? Or, in our case, how do we make sure that somebody that wants a cup of coffee gets a free one and doesn't get wasted, right?
The last one that we jointly came up with was, I think, both of our favorites. So we decided to think about, okay, we have an ongoing role ourselves. We are the manager of this coffee shop. We're trying to make a living here by selling coffee, sorry. And so the point is, you don't want to treat this problem in isolation. You want to think, okay, how do I go on running my coffee shop, making money? I've got this person I can't do this as a regular business model, yet I also don't want him to make a scene. So how exactly do I do this? We say, fine. So she mentioned the free flight, but what we say is free samples. So we say, here are 3 most popular, little bitty amounts, and say, decide which one you like. If you like one well enough, buy a cup.
Okay. So in this scenario, the place has free samples. There's another place that you invented it. Understood. So you're saying that the loss of a free sample is less than the loss of somebody coming in and exploiting the system over and over and over again. Great on the defense side, but also how could you then just use that to get me free coffee?
Oh, well, so I'm assuming I'm the owner of the place.
Sure, let's assume you're not the owner. How would you use that to get me free coffee?
Up until then, I was assuming I was the owner. So if I'm just another random person, I would walk up to a barista or the owner if I knew they were there. I say, look, this guy seems like he's kind of nutty. He's insisting on getting free coffee. Up to you. You're the owner. If I were him, I'd give him some free coffee, maybe just a little bit so that he'll shut up and go away.
So the system itself wants to keep operating. The system wants the flow to go. It doesn't want like 4 people to walk in, see that there's somebody in the corner making a scene, and have those 4 customers walk out. So what is the economics, or what is the balance of a system to say, we will let this part be exploited to preserve the ongoing movement of the system? And when you understand that, almost always ways to kind of game the system or bug the system or find something in the system that you want later fall out.
So I'm going to have a friendly bet with the barista, blindfolded, that I can tell you where that coffee came from. Taste it and say, that's Blue Mountain Jamaican. And if I'm right, will you give me a free cup of coffee?
All right, so we're going to appeal to the system's expertise. The owner, the barista, somebody in the system may have the ego to think that they know more about coffee than you do, and you may be able to exploit that. Now, that works in human systems. It's hard to do that with a mechanical system, but this is partly human, partly mechanical, and there could be some technology depending on how you constructed your coffee shop. Exactly. All right.
Hi, I own a coffee shop in Cincinnati. I've heard about this place, and I've been dying to come here and check it out. And if any time you're in Cincinnati, drop into my place, and I'll be happy to treat you to a cup of my best.
All right, so this is putting the system on an equal plane of trust. He is saying he has a similar system. He's trying to plug his system into theirs to be able to transfer something between the two.
I may or may not actually own a coffee shop.
It doesn't matter. But you've recognized a trust boundary, that the outside of our coffee shop, that big box on the outside, is where that system begins and ends. And if we have a way to interface with it on a similar trust plane, now we can do things like that. We can say, hey, I have a coffee shop in Cincinnati. I've got this great supplier. They have the most amazing coffee. Let me get you some samples or write you an invoice, and then just transfer me some and I'll ship it to you later. How do you like this coffee I walked into? Or any other number of scenarios once you've put your system on a similar plane. This is especially vulnerable in computer systems when you've gotten to an equal level of trust.
Well, there's a lot of, often there's a lot of cups sitting out and about, and we were just thinking we would go take one of them.
So the exploit in this particular case is there's a cup sitting out, and you're just going to take a cup of coffee. Where's that coffee sitting?
It's sitting out on the counter because there's a whole bunch of stuff prepared. You know, all these people ordering off their apps, they're just sitting there.
Yep, the pickup window. So there's just coffee sitting out there, right? How many times has somebody been in a hurry and thought to themselves, I just, fine. But you don't, most people. But that's a great example.
I was going to say, it's impersonation. Why take one? You can take like 3 and pretend you're taking to an office or Dent.
All right. So who stops the busy person on the way out the door when they're trying to grab all of the resources and they're like, yeah, I got to get this to the office, the whatever, right? And so what we're doing now is saying that we're a large customer. We are someone that has volume or have someone that has flow. Maybe they don't check as much as they might if you're coming in and pulling like the one super special order that they might know the person from. But if you come in and take 8, you might be able to manipulate the system differently. So this breaks some of the assumptions, some of the expectations. We expect someone to come in and take their coffee and leave. And we're going to talk about this with identity at the kind of the very end.
There's like a lot of opportunity for bartering. We came up with a few, so these aren't all mine, but sign up for a rewards program, give me a review, clean the bathroom, just ask, what do you have to exchange for this coffee?
So we're going to appeal to something else, maybe to an external bit of trust, maybe an external system, a rewards program, something that says outside of this system that you're allowed to get a free resource from this system.
I was back on the waiting theme. Wait till they close, particularly when they close the point of sale system, and then ask for a cup.
All right. Can I ask, have you worked in food service before?
I've exploited that before.
All right, so I have worked in food service, and we don't like you, just as a heads up. But a valid thing. Do I want to reopen the register? I've already done the count out. I've already closed it. So what we're doing here is we're playing with transfer states of the system. This isn't where the system usually operates. This is where the system starts to change state. And somebody may not have accounted for this. We're going from the operating state to the shutdown state. And this happens in biology and chemistry with S-curves. This happens in mechanical systems with engines stopping. This happens with performances near the end where people are starting to clean up. They might not be as diligent as they were when things started. So that transfer of state when something is moving from A to B is very often a time where you will see a vulnerability or some point of less diligence fall out.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to give two. The first is bring your own cup and get free fills. The next one is take a cup of half-drunk coffee out of the trash.
These are both perfect. The free refill one is we have a resource in the system that's not guarded, that doesn't go through the same rigor and the same process as if you had run the system by yourself. So when someone built the coffee shop or whatever system this is, they said, okay, a person's going to walk in, they look at the menu, they're going to order, they're going to give money, they're going to wait till their order's done, they're going to walk away. This violates that. It says, I'm going to walk right to the free refills, push my cup, and I might linger for a second to make it not look weird, and then I'm out. And the second one's out of the trash, is that right? Yep. So the problem statement was, get me free coffee. It wasn't get me good coffee. It wasn't get me warm coffee. It wasn't get me coffee I like. It wasn't even get me drinkable coffee, right? And some people have said, hey, you didn't say brewed coffee. And so sometimes I do have to specify that. But regardless, it's a great place because this is where resources in the system that are usually protected, that are usually thought after, are just completely discarded. And now there's the same thing that you would have to pay for, or the same thing you would have to kind of do work for, in a place where it can just be consumed. Oh, yes?
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I have no idea what I'm going to say because he just put this microphone in my face and all my answers have been taken. The first answer that came to mind was just the pickup window. On my planet, in my coffee shop, it's super busy. Lots of drinks that have been prepared, waiting for people to pick them up. Just go grab one, put it in front of them, done. I'm out. So that's all I had. Sorry.
No apologies. There's literally no wrong answers here.
Yeah, so I think to the kind of the free refill concept, I mean, one of the things that I thought about is a lot of what we've been talking about kind of makes the assumption that we're thinking about getting a hot cup of coffee that needs to be prepared, but a lot of times iced coffees are containerized coffees or in refrigerators that are unguarded. And so that's just kind of going over to the free refill station. That's a place that you can go over and you can take an iced coffee out and just give it to the individual.
Absolutely. Is there another path in the system that's designed to be faster than the normal flow? And this particular path is designed to be super fast. Come in, grab your Frappuccino or whatever it is in that bottle, get to the counter, you're out. Because they want flow with that. They want to have as many things moving as quickly as possible. And so speed in systems usually is a place where you'll find less diligence.
That's my shop, and you came in and said free coffee. Never seen you before, so you're a new customer. New customers get a free cup.
All right. So now we're thinking about before we were thinking about the closed state. Now we're thinking about the open state. What happens when the first time somebody interacts with a system? Have they been established? Do I know you? Do I know your identity? If you're really invested in your shop and you know all your customers and all your regulars and you see a brand new person coming in, you're like, I want to build a relationship. I want to make sure that we onboard this new user to my SaaS correctly. So they might get a little more leeway in what they're able to do in those states.
We had talked to, we assumed we were a third party, like we were another customer there that was taking over. So we had all the things people mentioned. A couple of the ones that I hadn't heard mentioned. One was just go impersonate the barista and go walk behind the counter and make coffee for them. Another one was go to your own home, make a cup of coffee and bring it back to them. What were some, I'm trying to think of any others that were, I think everybody.
Okay. So one was impersonate the barista. And just walk in the back. Do we even need to impersonate the barista, or can we just walk in the back? We just walk in the back. And so looking at our system, we kind of have like two boxes here. We have like the main coffee shop, and we have the more trusted area where like the baristas are. But if there's no resistance, if there's nothing to change state or to ask us what our identity is when we pass through that secondary system, we can do whatever the baristas did. Like you might be able to go back there and just start running the machine. They'd be like, we've been short staffed. We can't get anybody to come in. Like this person might just be a new hire. We have no idea. And the other one was go home and make a cup of coffee. So we're going to talk about that. That's perfectly valid from getting me a free cup of coffee, but that's outside of the scope of our system. Because now we enter the whole world. And we're like, okay, we can do that, but we're not hacking everything. We're just trying to think about hacking our coffee shop. So we usually kind of consider that a scope. You had something?
So one thing we haven't talked about is getting the definition of free. And so I could use counterfeit money in order to get the coffee, which then would technically be free because it wasn't real money.
So, sorry I skipped you, I'll come back. But absolutely, free just meant a free cup of coffee to me. You could use points, you could use a fake credit card, you could use Bitcoin, you could use counterfeit money. It didn't matter to me how you got it out of the system. The consequences are on you, not me. But we'll talk about that in a second.
You could go up to the barista and say that you accidentally put salt in your coffee rather than sugar. And could you have another, please?
So appeal to the person who has the authority to give you another one. So can we say to the person or the thing or the system, hey, I bought one. Now can I get another because I messed up or you messed up? And how many times can we do that? Can we do that twice? Can we do that 100 times? Can we do that? How many times does one pass through the system get you the resource that the system was supposed to give you? You had a comment? Oh. All right, well, let me finish here, and then I'll come back around to you.
This actually happened to me where I ordered, went into the bathroom, someone took my drink, and off they went. So you could wait for that to happen where somebody's ordered, they go into the bathroom, you grab the drink, and now you get a free drink.
Absolutely. Similar outcome from a slightly different vector, but going to the same kind of point in the system and going, my order was lost. I don't know what happened. This thing, the box was supposed to show up on my door. It never did. This is kind of more specific to kind of these types of systems, but something you could look for in other ones too.
Yeah. Well, we figured that one of the things that would be valuable to the coffee shop too would be to basically put a card in front of them that's the loyalty program information and say, you fill this out and I'll bring you a cup of coffee. That's still free.
Me or?
Well, I'm saying, because I thought the question was about the coffee shop owner giving.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Why would I give it and how can I create a little value?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And as someone else, you're saying, all right, look for other places that this just falls out. Is there transitive value that we can have where the owner wants you to do this, and I can just totally fill in like somebody else's information and get a free cup of coffee if I wanted, or I could be honest about it. But that's going to go back to identity, which we're going to talk about at the very end. And I think you had one. Sorry.
Just in terms of different types that maybe we haven't touched on, like I could spoil someone else's coffee so that it's no longer desirable to them so that you can take it. Or you could get yourself hired so that you're now in a position of giving away the coffee.
Absolutely. These are two great ones. One is there someone else in the shop that already has gone through the system and now has the resource outside of the system that I'm looking for? And can I spoil theirs? Can I take theirs? Can I convince them that, hey, that you took my coffee, And like now they have to question their reality to see whether or not, and the other one is get a job. Like just start working for the shop or come in and say, hey, can I, try making coffee for 15 minutes. I kind of want to maybe do a thing here. Or go find an apron on eBay and just walk in the back and do the thing for a minute and walk out. Be like, who was that? They're busy. They got flow, especially if you do it during like a busy part of the day. All right. Does anyone else have any other ideas before we kind of... Oh.
Well, you put this diagram up after you had us name the free things, okay? But if I now have the system sitting in front of me, I might sit back for a minute, analyze the system, see how well those three people are actually talking to each other, look for the breakdown in communication between them, and exploit it.
Absolutely, and we're literally going to talk about that exact thing in a second. He's pointing to you, you're pointing to him.
I was just going to say, along this line, flash mob. Just have a flash mob at the coffee shop. Get all the coffee you want.
All right. So we're gonna dance in this coffee shop until they give us coffee. Is that no? All right. All right. We're. All right. We're running a little low on time. So, but you'll notice we almost never said the same thing twice. Right? Everyone here came up with a different way and a different vector and a different thinking about how can we do that. And there was some people had repeats of other things that people said, but we went through like 30 some ways here in the span of about 30 minutes to look at a system, understand it, and then get the resource out of the system that we wanted. So let's talk about what we just did. Let's talk about the flow of those steps, and let's talk about what the methodology kind of is. All right. So first we defined our system. And you sit down and kind of think about your concept and your assumptions and your pre-notions of what this particular system was. Then we inspected that system to understand how it was designed, how it was supposed to be used. What did the people, what was their exigence of building the coffee shop? Why did we build the coffee shop? What was the reason that we're here? And how did we expect it to be used? Now, can anyone give me a one-word answer of why we've built a coffee shop? You can just shout it out. Coffee. The whole point of constructing this system was about building a thing that would take $5 from you, take coffee, and somehow get it to you. And in every system that's been constructed or built, there's something, whether it is private information, credit card numbers, a chemical reaction, a legal outcome, a mechanical change, that the reason the system was built. And if once we identify that, the coffee of whatever that system is, we can start thinking of ways of how to manipulate, change, or exploit the system, or realign the system such that we can get that thing out of the system. So we stepped through a process. Our process initially was to understand our system boundaries, the parts of the system, the flow of the system, and then we deconstructed a little bit and we talked about identity. So let's go through this really quickly. So to invalidate the original assumptions of the system, we had to work backwards. We had to start, okay, you may have initially, when you thought of your idea of a coffee shop, started at the coffee machine, or you might have started at the door, or you might have started at the experience. But there was some fog. There was some not correct understanding of exactly what the coffee shop was, but there was a concept. And so we very slowly iterated to say, okay, this is what the coffee shop looks like. It's, maybe has a barista. They may also run the machine. We kind of took another step to get that fog to go away a little bit more, to understand what all the parts and the pieces were inside of it. And eventually we got to a specific coffee shop in our mind that we could start doing work on, that we could start thinking about, that we could start manipulating and changing. So the first thing we had to do was draw this box. Where does the big coffee shop begin and end? Where does our system begin and end, the outside? We might be in a strip mall with a laundromat and a donut shop, and maybe the laundromat has for free bad cup of percolating coffee, but we don't care about that. We can always go home and make coffee. We need to know the boundaries of which systems, and we know how to interact with it. Some things are going to flow in and out of our system. Vendors are going to come in and drop off supplies. Customers are going to come in and make orders and flow out of the system. Then we need to understand the boundaries inside of our system. Some people came up with some great examples that said, okay, I'm just going to walk in the back and get a cup of coffee. So this is a boundary. In the designer's mind, you're not supposed to go back there. You're not supposed to just walk behind the counter and start running the machine. So we have a difference of trust, a difference of plane of where security begins and ends, or where a different type of authority or access or token or energy state allows you to do more privileged operations in the system. So not everybody that walks into a coffee shop is supposed to immediately become a barista. Then we talked a little bit about the parts. I had you kind of sit back and list, okay, we've built this construct, but what are all the things inside of it? What are all the people inside of it? That lets us know who and what we can interact with and what their assumptions about those are. So we assumed that there was coffee. We assumed that that coffee had to go into some kind of container, some kind of cup. We assumed that there would be people there either taking our money or making coffee for us. Maybe there's a manager in the back. Maybe there's a district manager that's going to come in occasionally. Maybe there's a vendor. Maybe there's a firefighter or police person that frequents the place. Maybe there's a frequent customer that comes in. So we got an understanding of what all the things were, all the inanimate objects, all the things that are meant to be used in some way, shape, or form. And then we got an understanding of what the interactive parts of the system were, who we could talk to, who we could try and manipulate or maneuver or do things that maybe the system wasn't designed to do. Look, will you just give this guy a free cup of coffee, he'll leave. He's going to cause a ruckus, 10 other people are going to walk out, and he's really not going to leave until you give him a free cup of coffee. Hey, it's my birthday. You know, all of these other things that can cause slight variations and slight violations in the system are generally the things that are completely undefined. And if there's people in a system, usually their states are always in some point undefined. They might be having a bad day. They might hate the manager. They might, just not care about the coffee anymore. Someone in their family might have just died. So next we moved on to the flow of the system and understanding how it was supposed to work. When someone built it, and it took a second, right? It took a second for us to switch from, we built this thing, how is it supposed to work, to now I need to exploit this. And when people build systems, very, very, very rarely do they think at the same time, how is somebody going to come in and abuse my coffee shop or abuse my system? Because it's hard. It's hard to change that mind. So here's kind of the usual flow. You walk in the door. You might look at the menu. You might know what you already want. You walk up. You have an interaction, a protocol back and forth with the person working there. You make your order. You give them some money. Then it kicks off a new flow. Because we go to the right if we're the customer, and we end up on the end waiting for our coffee, at least in my coffee shop. But another flow in the system kicks off, which is the cashier talks to the barista. The barista may take the cup or the order. They start manipulating the machine. They make the coffee. It ends up on the end. So we've done one action in this system, order, which has kicked off an entire new flow that we can think about and think of different ways to exploit. So one of the ways that we didn't come up with was, I'm going to take a cup, write my order on it, and just hand it right in front of the barista. And if they're busy and they're flowing and they're flying, I can just inject myself into their flow. So when some people got a little stuck, it takes a minute to kind of change your thinking. You got to come up and come back down. One of the tools we can use is deconstruction. So we understand the big parts of our system, but how do we unpack that more? If I was just standing there and I was looking at this thing operating, I would go, it's hard to read though, I'll move on. So if I was just standing and looking at this, I could see this as just one piece of the system and go, oh, well, I don't care about that because I made my order. Now that part of the system's going to do its thing and my coffee's going to come out the other end. But if we start pulling that apart to every single step involved in this flow, my order is placed, the order is recorded, the money is taken, a receipt is printed, the receipt is handed back to the person, the cup is handed to the barista operates the machine. We could go even deeper. We could start saying, okay, well, how does one operate a coffee machine? Are there ways and things I can do there? And keep going down the fractal to say, all right, I'm going to deconstruct this thing. Is there a maintenance button on the back of the machine I can press and become a coffee machine expert to see if there's a way we can come out? All right, and let's move on. And then we can just start deconstructing other parts, the parts that we can directly interact with. So usually you want to start somewhere where you have some form of control, where I'm in line and I get to interact directly with this barista. And a lot of people came up with these examples. Say it's my birthday, appeal to this person's humanity, try and have this thing change. But there's an established protocol, just like at a restaurant. You walk up, they may say hi, you may say hi back. They take your order, you give them some type of payment. That payment is taken, it's declined, or it goes through. every single step of that along the way, there's something that could happen. Oh, well, I'm sorry, my card got declined. You know, I'm a little short on my rent. You know, are you all right, just give me a free cup of coffee? Every single step there, every single place where we can have some control or some interaction with the system is a place that we can potentially change or exploit the system. All right. Abstraction, we talked about this a little bit already. Just thinking of this part of the system, even though there's 50 moving parts here, there's 3 different people, there's a coffee machine, there's cups, there's water, there's, you know, sugar pumps, there's like all types of things. Just being, all right, I don't care about that. It's one thing. My money goes in and coffee comes out. We now treat this as a box. And then we come up with, okay, well, if the coffee just comes out, how does the coffee come out? And a lot of people came up with examples of we just go up to the end and we just take it. Which goes on to kind of the last bit of methodology that we walk through, that you walked through, you all did this, is identity. In this system, who am I? Am I the manager? Am I a barista? Am I a point of authority? Is it my birthday? Am I a regular customer? And what does that person get you access to? So if we go up and we order a single drip 12-ounce cup and we pay and we go to the end, based on how the system was constructed, what are we entitled to? That one cup. We're entitled to one 12-ounce cup of coffee with our name on it. Now, how do we violate that? Many people already came up with different ways. I come up and say, hi, my name's Tom, and that's my coffee. I come up and I just grab a coffee. I come up and I wait till another person named Tom orders, and they say, are you Tom? Like, yeah, I'm Tom. Here's my ID. I'm out. So a lot of different ways to think and play with identity in these systems that allow you to violate the implicit trust. And where there's implicit trust, there's implicit problems with systems. All right. Disclaimer, hacking is not consequence-free. Stealing coffee, if you steal coffee, you'll eventually go to jail. So don't use any of this. But do use this mindset to look at systems that you're a part of and say, hey, what were the assumptions we made about this system? And I think one of the ones in the back was absolutely great. They're like, I just threw out your assumption that somebody knew what coffee was. So I'm going to describe coffee, because we're probably not on the same page about what coffee means. And then looking, I'm sorry, yes?
Well, you know what's interesting is also using this not just for hacking, but like just walk out technology, JWO is totally based on abstraction, deconstruction. It's all of this, not for the purpose of hacking, but for the purpose of allowing somebody to walk out without showing their pain.
Absolutely. And all of these concepts are like just the beginning of the surface. So where would we go to from here? Like, what would be the next step after we've kind of used these tools? We would start looking at side effects. If I move something over here in the system, does something else happen? If I unplug the coffee machine, do they start giving out free coffee tokens until they get it fixed and repaired? Are there other ways to have something happen in the system which they didn't expect and also cascade another problem somewhere else? We would look at more parts of the system. What is the flow? What is the data that exchanges between two parts? If you're in a biological system, it might be proteins that go from one cell to another, or ion chains. If you're in a chemical system, it might be reagents that come out. If you're in a legal system, it might be documents that spill into the ether. And then we'd start doing things by sorting probability and time. So the most common, fast way for us to do this is there's probably coffee sitting out on the end all the time. We can probably just grab one and walk away. That's probably the easiest, fastest, most consequence-free way to do that. But we'd have to look at all the 30 different ways that people came up with and say, what is the probability that'll work? How much time and energy involved? And is that greater than the thing that we would end up getting out of the system? And how easy is that to reproduce? Like the coffee shop owner that wants to make relationships with every customer that walks in with a new customer. He knows everybody. Like, you're only going to get to pull that once, maybe, unless somebody's new working for the day. So, and then we'd eventually get into things like loop theory and loop conflict reconstruction. But that's kind of the next steps of all of this. And so here are my takeaways. Hacking has absolutely nothing to do solely with computers. Computers are just a convenient system to hack. Any system can be hacked. And I hope you got some new tools and some new ways of thinking of the world by coming to the workshop today. Thank you for all the work you put in, because we wouldn't have been able to do anything we did today without all of you being heads down and thinking really deeply about your hypothetical coffee shop.